Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming out today. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sheriff Mike Ezel, the sheriff here in Jackson County. And we want to welcome you to Jackson County, and we thank you for being a part of this long-term event that has been going on here in Jackson County for many years. Tomorrow will actually be December the 5th, 1982 is when this happened. So tomorrow will be 38 years ago that Baby Jane was discovered in the Escatawba River. And I'm going to read some of this information here so that we can kind of get a timeline going and you can understand what's going on here. So on December the 5th, 1982, 38 years ago tomorrow, the body of a female toddler was discovered in the Escatawba River near the Interstate 10 bridge. Responding deputies located the child's body, and the sheriff's flotilla recovered her from the river. Jackson County Medical Examiner's Office determined the cause was drowning. Since then, investigators have worked available leads with the assistance of the National Center of Missing and Exploiting Children to determine the child's identity. In 2014, a NEMIC, which that's the term they use for this missing and exploited child's thing, I'll just try to use it. In 2014, NEMIC forensic artists created a facial reconstruction of what the child may have looked like and distributed it to social media across the country in hopes that somebody might recognize her. In 2019, the Jackson County Sheriff's Department brought Baby Jane's DNA samples to the Ortham Incorporated Lab, which is located in the Woodlands, Texas, to obtain a DNA profile suitable for a genealogical search. With the assistance of the Sheriff's Office, Department, and the FBI, a candidate family members were identified through DNA testing at the Ortham Lab. Baby Jane has been identified as Alicia Ann Heinrich, daughter of Gwendolyn Clemens, both of whom went missing in Missouri in 1982. We have identified them both through the investigative techniques of DNA, modern technology, and the help of all of our friends in law enforcement across this country. And I would like to give a big hand to everybody that worked on the case right now. One of the things about being a law enforcement officer is that there are things that you get to do that normal folks out there in industrial work don't get to do. But these are one of the very satisfying, rewarding things that do happen occasionally in law enforcement, and I'm very thankful. We have several members of the Sheriff's Office that were there in those days that are here this morning, and we'll talk to them here in a little bit. The backstory on this thing continuing is, if you look over here to my right, you see Deputy Hope Manning. She began working as an investigator in 2007. She came across part of Baby Jane's file in 2008. She began asking questions and soon determined to do everything she could to identify the child. In 2009, with the assistance of Coroner Vicki Broadus and pathologist Dr. McGarry, Hope had Alicia's body exhumed and tissue samples were collected. The samples were sent to the state crime lab, but no leads developed. Hope started a Facebook page with the given name Delta Dawn and kept this case active and open throughout the past several years. Hope credits some of her associates, Ellen Leach, Lynn Hansen, and Marge Brinker, for assisting her and being her support group in this process. During the fall of 2019, Sergeant Edward Clark approached Captain Randy Muffley about having Alicia's DNA compared to the genealogy sites to attempt to locate family members. November of 19, evidence technician Jeremy Miller contacted Ortham and then transported Alicia's tissues, which had been in storage at the Sheriff's Department, to the lab with the purpose to develop a DNA profile to build a genealogy report. Also during this time frame, Catherine Sersbrook from New York, a private citizen who had been looking at some of this stuff on social media, contacted Captain Muffley and offered to pay for the fees for the lab. Catherine agreed to pay for all the leaves, and things were taken out to the lab out there in Texas. In June 2020, Ortham provided a report of possible family members, and investigators began planning the next step in the investigation. August 2020, Pascagoula police officer Joe Bignell with the FBI Safe Streets Task Force began assisting with the investigation. He traveled to Missouri along with other investigators and met some of the relatives of Alicia. He learned Gwendolyn May Clemens was Alicia's mother, which this is her photograph, and they both had been missing since Thanksgiving 1982. DNA sample collected from family member was transported to Ortham. September, a month later, Captain Muffley, Sergeant Edward Clark, and Officer Joe Bignell traveled to Missouri to conduct interviews with family members and associates of Gwendolyn. While the investigators were meeting with the family, Ortham Laboratories advised the recently collected DNA sample confirmed Alicia's identity. Gwendolyn's family advised she left Joplin, Missouri around Thanksgiving 1982 with her daughter Alicia and a male friend. The family advised they never heard from Gwen again. During the investigation, investigators learned the male friend is now deceased. Investigators learned the three of them were supposed to travel to Florida to start a new life. And then days after leaving town, Alicia's body was discovered in Jackson County, Mississippi. DNA samples were collected from two of Gwendolyn's family members and sent to NamUs. Gwendolyn's profile can be seen on their website. We are asking any agency or any individual with any information on an unidentified female's body matching Gwendolyn's description to contact us. This is an ongoing investigation, and anonymous tips can be made through Crime Stoppers. What I'll continue to want to just tell you is that we do have a suspect. Of course, like I said a minute ago, he is deceased. We have family members up there that are cooperating with us, is the reason why we don't want to release his name at this time. And so with that said, I would like for some of the members of the team to step up that worked on the case, and we'll try to answer some of your questions. Come on up, Muffler. Come on up, Joe. I mean, don't be afraid. Come on, Eddie. All right. Just kind of a timeline of the how it kind of happened with Jackson County. On December 3rd, 1982, citizens reports from a CB of a radio traffic that a woman was walking westbound on Interstate 10 around the state line, and she was carrying a child, but she refused assistance. On December the 5th, Ted Hammonds, a truck driver, reported seeing a female floating in the river close to the bridge, assuming it was the Escatawba River. Responding deputies located the child's body. In 2009, Alicia's body was exhumed for collection of DNA samples. 2009, they were sent to University of North Texas. We got no results. The reason why they were sent to North Texas is because the National Missing and Unidentified Persons is associated with the University of North Texas. 2019, samples taken to the North Lab, which in the Woodlands, Texas, was to try to get that DNA genealogy report, which came back as we spoke about earlier. And Ortham provided possible family members in Missouri. And so investigators traveled to Missouri, as we talked about earlier, with some of this information, identified the baby, revealed as Alicia Ann Heinrich, and her mother, Gwendolyn May Clemens, whereabouts still unknown. She's never been discovered or found or located, so this is an ongoing active investigation. So that's part of the big thing here today, is try to get as much information out as possible so that we could find out if maybe some other agency has an unidentified body of a white female like this. So with that said, I would like to open it up, and we'll see if we can answer some of your questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so we don't know whether or not Gwendolyn is dead.
We do not know if she's dead or alive. And so, you know, that's where we are at this point. We do have family members that are cooperating with us, so we're going to continue to, you know, like I say, she hasn't been heard of since Thanksgiving of '82. We're assuming the worst, but we don't know that for sure.
Is there any indication that this person that was seen in the river could have been Gwendolyn?
We don't know that. You know, there's always that possibility. I know that during that time, an extensive search was conducted by the sheriff's flotilla with no results.
You said the suspect is deceased. How do you know the role that he played in Baby Alicia's death, possibly Gwendolyn?
Yeah, well, they left together with him. And what they said was, what the information that we were able to get out of that was that she told her family members she was going with him to start a new life down in Florida. And so, you know, shortly thereafter, when he returned, they weren't with him. And so, you know, of course, we don't find out this information until just recently. And so far, like I say, family members are cooperating with us, is the reason why we don't want to release his name. And also, he's not here to defend himself. So, you know, until we get, you know, some more information, you know, we're going to hold that until we, you know, make a definite determination on it.
But there's no reason to believe that Gwendolyn, you know, tossed the baby or anything like
No.
that?
Yeah, we have no idea how the child ended up in the river. And so, you know, right now we have some thoughts, but, you know, we don't have any evidence. Yes, sir.
How confident are you that there was a female with a small child walking on the bridge that day? How confident are you that was Gwendolyn and Alicia?
Well, you know, at the time, that was during the CB craze. And so many people had CBs, and we don't know that for sure. We do have, you know, it's kind of, I guess you'd say, circumstantial. Just so happens at that time that, you know, a child is found in the water, you know, and the woman is missing. So we are assuming that that could be a possibility, but we don't know that for sure.
So could you come up and tell us a little bit about, I know that you're dedicated to doing these kinds of investigations. Could you come up and tell us a little bit about what your role in this?
You're welcome to, if you'd like. But
this is a very emotional case for Hope.
yeah,
I mean, this consumed her life for years, and unfortunately, she would love to tell y'all some things about it, but it just brings up too many memories, and I don't think she could speak through it. But she's pretty much kept this case fresh in everyone's minds all these years, and without her doing that, you know, when I first came to CID, I didn't know there was a Baby Jane box stuck away in a corner. It wasn't for people like her and Joe and his wife Samantha Bignell and citizens, you know, that care about these unsolved cases.
Yeah.
You know, she would still be identified, but I want to credit these guys for the work they did.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's you know, it's dedication of hard-working officers like Hope and others in the organization that have kept this thing alive, and you know, for it to come to fruition today. Yes.
Do you have an idea of who's in this room that was here investigating back in the day? Because I know this is something I spoke to 3 years ago, someone who was 16 years old on the flotilla.
Yeah.
Who are investigators still in here that started this?
Well, we have some members. Please stand. Anybody that had any involvement in that at all during that time. And so you turn around and take a look at them. You know, we have some members of the sheriff's office that was back in the day. And we're glad that we were able to round them up and get them in here today. And back here, Mr. Lewis Seaman. You know, he's a very behind-the-scenes kind of guy, but he was a man. Please come up, Lewis. Come on up. He was on the flotilla boat that day when they found the child. Come on up, Lewis. Don't. It's okay. This is Captain Randy Muffley of CID of Jackson County Sheriff's Office.
Randy, M-U-F-F-L-E-Y.
Come on up, Lewis.
Sheriff.
Yes.
So are we saying that the deceased man, that this is the same man that Gwendolyn left?
Yes. Yes. And
Is that the same man that is the suspect?
yes, he is. Yes, he is a suspect in this case right now
Has potential,
and has potential. Yes, if we can come along with further information that, like I say, we're still working on. We still have some cooperating witnesses in this thing. And, if we can put together a case more than we have, we will make it public.
Did the family know anything about this case? Is there a reason why they didn't reach out to y'all? Did they not?
No, they didn't know. I mean, this was, they had no idea. They had no idea that child had been recovered here in 1982. And it was through the efforts of the DNA, which led us up there to Missouri, which found some family members, which got us here today. So, no, they had no idea whatever happened to these two folks.
But they did know about Alicia. This wasn't did they know there was a baby?
No, they didn't know anything.
Oh, no, they knew Alicia was born.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but they didn't know that, we had recovered this child. Yeah. She was 18 months at the time. Yes.
Yeah, that picture's from her first birthday, right?
Yeah, it's her
Jeff?
first birthday right there. And we have a timeline that we're going to hand out to the media here at some point this morning.
Take us to that moment. You mentioned that the family did know Alicia, but just hearing that the words come from you all saying, we have this baby.
Yeah.
She's deceased, unfortunately, but we have found the baby that you guys probably been worried about or wondering about for all these years. Take us to that
Yeah.
moment and just the emotion.
Joe, yeah, go ahead. Joe Bignell with Pascagoula PD, who's a member of FBI Safe Streets. He was the guy that delivered the information.
The family was extremely overwhelmed. They had no idea. They were still under the assumption that Alicia was alive and living somewhere. I guess they were hoping. But they were very thankful that after 38 years that the case was still being worked. And it gave them some closure. The aunt and the grandmother were present along with one of the cousins, and they were extremely thankful that we were able to identify her and give her name back. And now they know what happened. They know where she was. So they were very thankful.
Do you think that they'll come down? Will there be another kind of funeral memorial for Alicia?
At some point, they did express that they would love to come down and see the grave. But with the current situation and the travel restrictions, it just didn't work out for them to be here for the press conference. But I have been in contact with the aunt and the family, and they should be watching the live stream now. So.
We also have members of the lab. The CEO of the lab is here from Texas, which thought it important enough to come out today. And if any of you have any questions that you'd like to ask of them, you're welcome to. If you have any of that.
The gentleman that was part of the flotilla, could you come up and kind of describe for us what you know?
I can't, boss.
All right.
Like I said, it's an emotional. I got choked up just talking about working all these years. So you can imagine for somebody that was actually there when this occurred.
I'll tell you, one of the hardest things, that law enforcement officers deal with is the death of a child. And, it brings back a lot of memories, I know, but it shows you the dedication of these folks and their commitment to public safety and public trust. And, that they'll get out there and do the hard work. And, that's why I'm always appreciative of these guys and gals. Everybody is so committed to public safety in Jackson County that, we're able to do things like this. And it's because we cooperate and work hard with each other. And, for these guys, and he was a volunteer in those days, and he's a volunteer in these days. all this time, Mr. Seaman has been on the sheriff flotilla, which is a non-paid job. And, but that just shows you the kind of dedication that's out there, that men and women of law enforcement.
Like Sheriff said, we do have Mr. David Middleman from Othram, the lab. Y'all have any questions of him?
Anybody?
Sure, I mean, if you want to
Come on up, man. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
I mean, you just kind of described your company's role in this investigation.
Sure. So my laboratory is a forensic laboratory. We take evidence from crime scenes, such as this one, where the DNA testing that's been previously done hasn't been effective. Maybe the DNA, there was not enough of it. Maybe it was degraded. For some reason, it was unsuitable. Or it had been through the law enforcement database and there was no match. And what we do is we take that kind of evidence and we can rework it, access information that previously couldn't be accessed, and then build out, as a sheriff and the captain alluded to, these profiles that contain tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of markers. And it allows us then to take an investigation that is looking for a little bit more information or a point in the right direction, and kind of steer them towards, or at least narrow down some possibilities as to the identity behind that DNA evidence. And so, long story short, just to say, is that we're accessing information from evidence that has been discarded or has been deemed unsuitable for testing, and then using that to kind of funnel the possibilities for law enforcement. And then, as has already been stated, it's the investigators that then go out and sort out the final pieces, talk to the people involved, and then something like this happens, which is an amazing event.
So the finding, I mean, having the evidence from Alicia's DNA is, and you map that out, but then how do you find a match? I mean, you have some sort of obviously you have access to a database. Can you kind of talk about that process?
Yeah, it's a good question. So over the last 20 years, people have complemented traditional genealogy and family tree building. About 20 years ago, people started using genetic testing to kind of narrow their search in the genealogical research that might go into building out their families. And in doing that, there's been this aggregation of online family trees, records, and folks that are basically trading information to see if they might uncover an additional relative that they didn't know that they had. Or maybe someone's adopted and they want to find their biological parents. And so what's happened is the genealogy and the data has been accumulating over the last 20 years. As I had mentioned earlier, what happened in the last few years is we now have ability to unlock information and evidence that was previously deemed unsuitable. You put the two of those together, and we're able to search through a lot of these records to figure out who might be part of that DNA sample. And the important part is that there's a large community of genealogy and folks that are doing the genealogical search, but a subset of those folks have consented or opted in, as they say, their information to help law enforcement search for folks. So there's a very broad sphere, probably 40 million people that have tested with a consumer testing company. And a small amount of those people have said, I would like to also help law enforcement. And it's from that population of folks that are interested in helping law enforcement that we then work with when we build a profile from the evidence to then try to produce leads that law enforcement can work. And it might be worth noting, just because there's obviously so much goodwill and so much history. And I can't believe there's so many folks here that were here when the event happened. But every time someone makes that decision to help and share information, this is the kind of outcome that emerges. And so we'll continue to build profiles, and I think you'll see in the next few years this explosion of cold cases that can now be accessed because we have technology that never existed. It didn't even exist in 2019, like brand new stuff that's just constantly rolling out, pushing the limits of what we can do. But it's through the cooperation and support of the community and folks, for example, that consent or contribute their family tree research to these investigations that allow us to really narrow in on a solution that can help law enforcement close a case.
How much of your work is tied into law enforcement versus other types for other reasons that you get DNA tested?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our company does nothing but law enforcement. So the only thing Othram does is develop forensic profiles from cases that are initiated from law enforcement. Now, whether the customer is necessarily law enforcement, or we also work with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. However that we get involved in the project, there are many ways. We're always working within the context of a law enforcement investigation. And so we're the only folks in the country that have a laboratory that does this entire process, evidence to answers in-house. And our exclusive interest and our exclusive focus and research and everything else is centered on producing leads that would help establish human ID from folks like Alicia that have been previously unidentified, or to identify unknown folks in a crime scene.
So did your company originally get involved because the woman in New York contacted you, or because the folks in Pascagoula contacted you?
We were actually in contact with law enforcement, and my understanding is what enabled law enforcement to continue and advance with us was the generosity of the woman in New York. Yeah, so the woman in New York and law enforcement had been talking, and the timing was right because we were also working on cases here in Mississippi, and so she facilitated their ability to engage with us, but our relationship was directly with the captain and his team.
So can somebody address how that relationship developed?
Go ahead, Ray.
Between the woman in New York
Yeah.
and your team?
Sarabusik. Yeah, Miss Catherine Sarabusik, she had just called me one day out of the blue, said she'd been reading up on this Baby Jane case from down here, and she wanted to help. And I said, what do you mean help? She goes, well, I'd like to, pay for it. Well, I said, well, just so happens we're working with the lab right now, and I put her in touch with Jeremy Miller, and they kind of communicate back with Othram, and we just let them two talk back and forth over the funding, and she took care of whatever bills they inquired from it. So out of her generosity, she just wanted to help out.
So that's one of just numerous kind of happenstance things
Yes, sir.
that happen. I mean, can you kind of talk about what kind of role serendipity plays in a case like this?
Like I mentioned earlier, I can't tell you how many people are out there who they look into these cold cases, and they just, they just want to help out, and they spend a lot of their free time. Them three ladies that help Hope, they're kind of like a support group for each other, and they just want to help get these folks identified.
What would you say to, encourage the gentleman with the DNA company? He wants to encourage people to make their DNA available for law enforcement. What would you say to encourage those people?
If you're willing to share your information, all it can do is help solve cases like this in the future. The more information we have, the more helpful it'll be.
And is it safe to say that information would be held private within your company and only shared with law enforcement?
Yeah, the important distinction between our company and I think a lot of other organizations is we're only a forensic lab, so there's no other use of the information that we collect other than to establish human identity or leads that would lead towards human identity, so that's correct.
How incredible is it, just encompassing everything, to see these people out here, to see these people that are emotional, to not give up on these cold cases, to not give up for justice in each and every one of your jobs?
Yeah, I tell you, that is one of the most, it's just a show of dedication, of law enforcement and of civilians that are concerned about the community. It's very rewarding. We don't do it for the money. We do it because it's the right thing to do. And, it has been a big morale booster around here. And I think it will be a morale booster around the country because there are so many people that, have just disappeared. And now that, like he was saying with this new technology, people are getting answers. People are learning things. We're learning things in law enforcement, and we're always open to new ideas and new technology. And that's how we solve cases, is to try to do as much as we can as a organization to make things better for our citizens. And, it's always a good feeling to me, and I know the rest of these folks, when our people step up and call and say, look, here's what we know, and it just leads to bigger and better things. So it's very rewarding, this kind of, sure is. Yes, sir.
The original CD report was that an adult's body was seen floating in the water.
Mm-hmm.
But a child's body was found. I know that, going out and cover a lot of these things, that it's, a very thorough search is done. Is there a possibility that the Gwendolyn's body was indeed there, but it just wasn't found?
But anything is possible. We don't know. What I'll say is there wasn't an intensive search during that time, and so we really don't know. That was the only report that we had, and so we found the child. We didn't find an adult, and so that's just part of the unknown that we still will have to deal with at some point, I guess.
Did the search continue after the child's body was found?
Oh yeah. What I'll say about the sheriff's flotilla, about these guys, and I've been around for quite a while, and some of these folks have been around longer than I have, but the flotilla is probably one of the most dedicated outfits that I've ever been involved with. They look until there's absolutely no other stone to turn over. So yeah, I will say I know there was an intensive search that day.
Is there anybody who was involved? I know all these other people, I'm assuming, because they're sitting down here and not standing up there. Is there anybody else that would be willing to speak to us today?
Anybody want to say anything? I can't believe McAnally don't want to talk. All right. Well, yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll be around for the next little while. We got a timeline we want to pass out to the media. I cannot emphasize enough the hard work and dedication of men and women of law enforcement, and I really appreciate all your efforts.
We just want to express our gratitude to Jasper County Sheriff's Office in Missouri.
Yes.
They went out of their way to assist us with this investigation, and
Detective Paul Byers was extremely helpful,
Yeah,
anything we needed.
Yeah, right. When they went up there, they called ahead of time, told them they were coming up, and law enforcement across the country is dedicated to help each other, and we were very pleased for the reception that was given to us and the hard work those guys helped us with up there. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry. Okay, come on up. We got one of the old deputies that wants to say a couple of words.
I resent that word, old.
Okay, well, all right.
Mature.
Yeah, there you go. Go right up here. You're welcome to come up first.
These officers here beside me we was all together on December the 5th, 1982. Terry Hanson, she, when I got the call that there was possible homicide, they didn't know at the time. She lived in Pascagoula, I live in St. Martin, and I'd asked her to go down, check out what's going on, and I would meet her at the hospital, which she did, and we did. Greg came over. He was an investigator, but Greg was he was involved in another homicide at that time. So back then, things was a lot different than it is now. But Terry was the lead investigator on it. I was a captain then, and she kept me informed of what all she was doing, and she did a tremendous job, and she'd be able to give you more details in it than I did. But most of all, what I want to say is that I want to thank all these officers, these gentlemen from Texas, everybody involved, to finally get closure.
After 38 years, this is the only case that's actually haunted any of us, because we solved mostly all of them, with the exception of Mindy LaPree, and the person that hurt her. He admitted it in California, and he's under arrest, thankfully. But Baby Jane Doe has always been a haunting case for us. And when we received the call from your detective, Sheriff Ledbetter, there he is, and his partner in crime, Greg. I don't know your last name, I'm sorry. Bodker. It brought tears to my eyes because they were continuing on with this 38 years later. I just want to say thank you to the sheriff, all the support that you've received, all that what she's done, hope, and she's given hope to all of us because now we don't have this nightmare. And thank you so much. I'm just grateful. Thank you.
It was one of the hardest cases that I ever came across due to the fact that it was a baby. It touched me in a lot of ways that I just didn't understand. And it stayed with me for a long time. And today it's back with me again as I see these pictures. It's touching. And I'm so glad that there's a closure. And again, I want to thank all of these good people here that continued this and brought it to light. I'm very thankful for it. And now maybe in a way I can come to grips with it now. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I want to thank the Sheriff's Department myself. Sheriff Ezel and his detectives have done a tremendous job. The part that I played in it in the beginning, I was part of exhuming the body, getting the DNA with Hope. She was detective at that time. At that particular time, under the previous Sheriff Mike Bird, this case was dead in the water. I went to the sheriff and I said, "Sheriff, can I reopen this case?" He said, "Yes, you can." I went upstairs. What was the chief detective then? Yeah, Mick. And I said, "Sheriff has given me permission to reopen this case." And he said, "Are you going to handle it?" I said, "I want a detective assigned to me." He assigned me Hope as a detective. And at that time, we gathered whatever we had and all that. And then we found out that there was no DNA back in '82. And I said, "We need to get DNA now." We got O'Brien O'Keefe Funeral Home, and we got the doctor, and we went out there, and me and the grave digger took the casket out of the ground, put it in a truck, and took it over. The doctor got the DNA, and they put it on a national database. But Hope here, she made I don't know how many trips talking to people, and she worked tremendously hard on it. And I was proud to be able to work with her at that time. And like I say, and Sheriff Ezel here, his people have done a tremendous job by following up on this case and getting it solved. And I told my wife years ago, which it was her idea for me to claim the body and bury the baby, which I did. And I said, "I pray to God that one day we'll find out who that baby was before I die." When I'm fixing to be 83 years old, and I thank God I've lived long enough to get that baby's name. And I thank this Sheriff's Department tremendously.
Can't make them do that.
Did I read that someone adopted the baby? Kind of, was that you?
What happened in the beginning, the baby was in the morgue at Singing River Hospital for a number of days. And we was at a dead end at that particular time. Our detectives that was working the case at that time, they didn't know anywhere else to go. So I went to Sheriff John Ledbetter, and I said, "Sheriff," I said, "what's going to happen to this baby?" He said, "It will be put in an unmarked grave." I said, no, I want that baby to have a Christian burial." I said, "Can I claim the body?" He said, "Yes, you can claim the body." So at that time, I got hold of Wells Funeral Home to go to the hospital, get the body, and we prepared it for the funeral. We had the funeral at my church, Bethel Assembly of God Church in Pascagoula, buried her at Jackson County Memorial.
This is even more personal for you.
Huh?
It's even more personal for you.
It is, it really is, and I've talked to one of the family members called me, in fact, last night, I told him, I said, I will do what I can do to help you get the baby up there if y'all want it. She said, well, you've had the baby for 38 years, you might as well keep it. I said, whatever you want to do, but I said, I've got the connections to get the baby moved if you want it moved. But they didn't want to move it.
You're from Missouri?
Me? No, I'm Eddie Clark.
Okay.
I'm here with the Sheriff's Office.
Okay, there's nobody here from the Missouri part?
No, we didn't have anybody show up. We would like for them to came, but the ongoing stuff, it just was impossible for them to show up.
No, I was the officer that found that baby that morning. And I'm glad for all these people that, finally could put a name to her, because, I mean, we just referred to her as Baby Jane. And now finally, after 38 years now, I can put a name to her. Thank you tremendously for it, and all of y'all. Y'all did a good job.
Ready?
You know, have many of you have seen the emotions that have been involved here today, and it's a very touching moment for so many, because so many times things happen and we never solve the case, but this has turned out a different story, and again, it's for the hard work of the men and women of law enforcement and modern technology. So I just want to thank you as the Sheriff of Jackson County, all of you, all of our citizens that have supported us so much, and I wish you a safe and happy holidays. Thank you very much.